The story begins long before the engagement ring, long before the name Cashero became something whispered with awe and curiosity. It begins with Kang Sang-ung as a mun living two lives, and with Kim Min-suk as the one person who never asked him to choose between them. To the world, Kang Sang-ung was careful, controlled, and always one step ahead. As Cashero, he carried a mask not just on his face, but in the way he spoke, the way he moved, and the way he trusted no one completely. But behind closed doors, when the noise faded and the danger felt distant, there was Min-suk. Calm, observant, and quietly strong, she saw the mun beneath the layers long before anyone else did. Their relationship didn't grow through grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It grew in pauses, in late nights when Sang-ung returned exhausted, and in moments when Min-suk chose understanding over questions. She didn't push him to explain everything, but she never turned away when the truth slowly surfaced. That patience became the foundation of their bond. As Sang-ung's double life became more dangerous, Min-suk's presence became steadier. She wasn't the kind of partner who demanded to be protected. Instead, she became someone who protected him in her own way. She reminded him who he was before the mask, and who he wanted to be after it. In a world built on deception and risk, she represented something real, something permanent. The engagement didn't come as a sudden surprise to those who truly watched them. It felt like a quiet decision made over time, shaped by shared resilience rather than impulse. When Sang-ung chose Min-suk as the woman he wanted to marry, it wasn't just a romantic milestone. It was a declaration that he wanted a future defined by honesty, stability, and trust. What made their engagement powerful wasn't the announcement itself, but what it symbolized. For Sang-ung, it meant stepping closer to a life where he no longer had to face everything alone. For Min-suk, it meant choosing a mun with shadows, knowing fully what those shadows cost, and standing beside him anyway. Jun-ho brings a quiet intensity to Kang Sang-ung, showing a mun torn between duty and desire, while Hye-jun gives Min-suk a grounded warmth that never feels fragile. Together, they create a relationship that feels lived in and believable, one built on mutual sacrifice rather than fantasy. Their engagement story isn't about perfection. It's about choice, choosing to stay, choosing to trust, choosing to build something lasting in a life where nothing is guaranteed. And that is why Min-suk isn't just the woman Kang Sang-ung plans to marry. She is the woman behind Cashero, the one who knew the truth, accepted it, and still chose love. As their engagement settled into reality, the weight of what it meant began to surface in quieter, more complicated ways. Kang Sang-ung didn't suddenly stop being Cashero the moment he put a ring on Min-suk's finger. The danger didn't disappear. The secrets didn't magically untangle themselves. But something inside him shifted. For the first time, his future was no longer an abstract idea. It had a face, a voice, and a life intertwined with his own. Min-suk noticed the change before anyone else did. He became more careful, not just in how he moved through the world, but in how he came back to her. He listened more. He explained more. Even when he couldn't tell her everything, he stopped hiding behind silence. That alone made their bond feel different from before. It was no longer just about enduring the present. It was about protecting a shared tomorrow. There were moments when fear crept in. Min-suk would lie awake, wondering if loving a mun like Sang-ung meant constantly preparing for loss. She knew the risks better than anyone. She had seen the injuries he tried to dismiss, the exhaustion he pretended wasn't there, the way his eyes sometimes scanned a room even when they were alone. But instead of pulling away, she leaned in closer. Not out of naivety, but out of resolve. For Sang-ung, that resolve was both comforting and terrifying. He had built his life on control, on anticipating every possible outcome. Loving Min-suk meant accepting that some things could not be controlled. It meant acknowledging that if something happened to him, she would be the one left behind. That thought haunted him more than any enemy ever could. It was during one of their quiet conversations, away from danger and disguise, that Sang-ung admitted this fear. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't ask her to leave. He simply told her the truth. Min-suk listened without interrupting, then reminded him that choosing love always comes with risk. The difference was that this risk was worth taking. As wedding plans slowly began to take shape, they were simple. No spectacle, no attention, just small decisions that reflected who they were. Dates chosen for meaning rather than convenience. Spaces selected for privacy rather than prestige. Everything about it felt intentionally modest, as if they were trying to carve out a moment of normalcy in lives that had rarely allowed it. Yet even in these ordinary preparations, the shadow of Cashero lingered. Sang-ung knew there were parts of his life that could never be fully separated from who he was. Min-suk knew it too. And still, she chose to move forward, not because she believed he would change overnight, but because she trusted his desire to try. What made their engagement resonate so deeply was not romance in the traditional sense. It was partnership. They didn't promise each other a perfect life. They promised honesty, effort, and the courage to face uncertainty together. Jun-ho's portrayal captures this internal struggle with remarkable restraint. His Sang-ung doesn't need long speeches to show conflict. It's there in his hesitation, in the way he looks at Min-suk as if memorizing her presence. Hye-jun's Min-suk, on the other hand, is quietly formidable. Her strength isn't loud, but it's unwavering. She doesn't save Sang-ung from his world. She gives him something to come back to. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that this engagement is more than a subplot. It is the emotional core of Cashero. Every risk Sang-ung takes, every decision he makes, is now measured against the life he wants to build with Min-suk. Love becomes his greatest vulnerability, but also his greatest reason to keep going. And in that balance between danger and devotion, between mask and meaning, their engagement stands as a reminder that even heroes need something real to hold onto. Because behind every mask, there is a human cost. And behind Cashero, there is love. As time moved forward, the reality of their engagement began to ripple outward, touching parts of Kang Sang-ung's life he had long kept separate. Decisions that once felt simple now carried weight. Every mission, every risk, every late-night disappearance now ended with the same thought in his mind. Min-suk would be waiting, wondering, hoping he would return safely. That awareness didn't weaken him. If anything, it sharpened him. Min-suk, too, found herself changing. She became more attuned to the unspoken rhythms of Sang-ung's life. She learned to read the difference between exhaustion and worry, between silence and secrecy. She didn't demand explanations when he couldn't give them, but she never let him disappear emotionally. Her presence became a constant, grounding force in a world built on instability. There were moments when Sang-ung considered stepping away from everything. Not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to believe that love could exist without danger following close behind. But reality was less forgiving. The world that created Cashero wasn't one he could simply abandon. Min-suk understood this before he even voiced it. She never asked him to stop being who he was. She only asked him to come back to her. That understanding became the quiet promise between them. In rare moments of peace, they spoke about the future in soft, careful terms. Not dreams filled with certainty, but hopes shaped by realism. A home that felt safe. Mornings that didn't begin with urgency. Evenings where silence meant comfort, not fear. These conversations were never long, but they lingered, giving Sang-ung something to reach for beyond survival. The closer they moved toward marriage, the more evident it became that Min-suk wasn't standing behind Sang-ung's life. She was standing beside it. She wasn't a weakness to be hidden. She was a strength he drew from. And that distinction changed everything. Jun-ho's performance continues to show him in balancing responsibility with longing, a hero learning that courage doesn't always mean charging forward. Sometimes it means staying. Hye-jun gives Min-suk a quiet authority, portraying a woman who understands the cost of loving someone like Sang-ung and chooses it anyway, without illusion. Their engagement transforms the story of Cashero into something deeper. It stops being only about justice, danger, and masks. It becomes about choice, about what someone is willing to protect, and who they are willing to become for the sake of love. As their wedding day approaches, uncertainty remains. Threats don't disappear. The past doesn't loosen its grip. But what changes is Sang-ung's resolve. He no longer fights just to survive or to win. He fights to return, to keep a promise, to honor the woman who saw him clearly and stayed. And Min-suk, in her steady, unshaken way, becomes the heart of that promise. Not because she believes in a fairy tale ending, but because she believes in effort, truth, and choosing each other again and again, even when the future is unclear. In the end, their engagement is not a pause in the story. It is the reason the story continues. Because behind the danger, behind the disguise, and behind the legend of Cashero, there is a man who wants a life that matters and a woman who believes he deserves it.